Hey guys, today I want to discuss 5 breeds that I think are not suitable for beginning dog owners. So this does not mean if you have this dog that this was a wrong choice or that your dog wasn't a good dog. I'm just saying, in my opinion and my professional dog trainer experience, these dogs are often not that great of a choice. Alrighty, let's start with my number 1. I didn't actually put them in an order of bad to worse, just my observations. So the first one for me is the German short-haired pointer. Beautiful dogs. I really like the breed. They are super drivey, they're super energetic, but they are also what I would like to call crackheads. And if you don't know how to deal with a dog like that, you're going to be in a world of trouble. They are extremely energetic, they are loud, they are really strong, they have enormous prey drive. So if you don't know what you're in for with this dog, you're going to be, well, having a rude awakening. Like I said, these dogs do love learning, they do love working, they have many uses if you want to go sport or hunting, or I've got a dog trainer friend that has a GSP as a service dog, like a medical alert dog. I think that's amazing. For me, a GSP is a working breed and not a pet dog. I often see this dog in pet homes where they get like a little bit of a walk, like our day walk, and slowly these dogs become really destructive or loud or really leash reactive. They're generally friendly dogs. I haven't met many that are generally aggressive, but they can come across a lot worse than they are by the amount of noise that they're making, or because they have so much pent up energy. I also find these dogs very hard to walk on a loose leash. Not impossible, absolutely, but most of these dogs require a lot of work on that. They're powerhouses. So if you're interested in this breed, make sure you're ready for the crackhead you're going to get into your house. Before we go to the next dog, what was your first dog? Drop it down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Up next, I want to discuss the American Staffordshire Terrier and the Pit Bull. I am going to group them together. Don't come for me. I know they are a different breed. They're not the same, but they are so similar that I'm going to put them in the same group. I love bully breeds. Don't get me wrong, I've got one myself. He's an Amstaff cross English Staffy. But Lennox was also my first dog. And man, I probably had a really hard first dog. Like, I mean, he got me where I am now. I'm a dog trainer because of him. But I mean, that's also saying he wasn't a very easy dog, right? Because I wouldn't have had to become a dog trainer if he was an easy dog. So I think the biggest problem potentially with M-Staffs and Pitties is the reactivity and aggression. And I know I'm going to get people, my Pitty would never hurt a fly. He is so good. He would never do any of it. Yeah, cool. But they are genetically predisposed to have a higher reactivity. That's just in them. Doesn't mean that all of them are like that, but it's still there. And I would say that the majority of dogs that I work with that are reactive and have aggression issues have Pitty or Staffy in them, or they are purebreds. Yeah, so for me, having a dog like that for a beginner with the high potential of aggression issues is just not recommended. If you want a dog that's going to be so good with any other dog without any issues out when you want to have them off leash. A pit bull, cross, or amstaff is most likely going to be a lot harder work than a dog that's less predisposed to aggression and reactivity issues. And I also want to touch on that even if your pitty or your staffy doesn't instigate, doesn't start anything, but gets into a fight for whatever reason, even if it's like an annoying little yap dog that's coming at your dog and your dog is on leash, just be mindful you are always to blame. That's just how society works with these dogs. So you need to be really aware of it, that you will always be at fault, even if it wasn't your fault. And you might say to me, oh, that's not fair. Well, I agree, but that's just how it is. Look at the news articles. Look at society. Oh, the pitty attacked someone. Fucking vicious dogs, right? I disagree with that most cases, but even if a lab and a pitty get into a fight, it'll be automatically decided by society that it must have been the pitty, because no way could the lab do anything wrong. And as a beginning dog owner, you need to be aware of that and not be offended by the general population. And I've also had people comment, like here in New Zealand, that they weren't welcome with their staffy crosses at campsites. They don't want pitties there. So there is discrimination against these breeds, sometimes warranted, sometimes not warranted. I also want you to be aware that if your dog does get into a fight, that is generally when behaviors come out that you probably didn't know your dog had in him, right? And with that I mean, this is where the gameness of the staffy and the pit comes in, right? And that's what makes them so dangerous, because when, let's say, a lab gets into a fight with a golden retriever, it becomes a scuffle and gets noisy, and then most likely, in most cases, it calms down and both of them back off. The problem with breeds that are bred for gameness, they don't back off, and that's why there are so many big incidents with pitties and staffies and all the crosses in between, because these dogs, when they get into a fight, and again, not all of them, but a lot of them, they will say, okay, let's go then, and I will go until you can't go anymore. So if you compare it with normal people, like if I was to get into a fight with someone on the street, most likely this would end really quickly, because either I'm intimidated, I'm like, never mind, or the other person is. It's very different when two MMA fighters are fighting. They go until the end, right? That's why there's rules. When you do boxing or fighting or kickboxing or MMA, you're only allowed to do that in the ring. Professionals are not to use their skills, or non-professionals. Because what happens when professionals use their skills or non-professionals out in the public, the fucking other person dies. Yeah, or they get extremely injured. And that is kind of the comparison I want to make here with staffies and pitties. Yeah, it's not like they go in thinking, I'm gonna fucking kill this dog. But they see it as alright, let's go then. And once I'm going, I'm gonna keep going because I wanna win this fight. And that is what makes these dogs more difficult and dangerous than a border collie that goes in for a bite and then it's like, oh shit, never mind, I didn't want to go this far. Whereas the staffy will go, okay, I'm loving this, let's go. Yeah. And again, nuance, not every staffy or pitty, but a lot of them. All right, number 3 on the list is the Husky and the Malamute. Again, they are separate breeds, but they're similar enough that I am going to put them in the same basket. And the reason for that, well, do we really need to talk about these? There's a reason why I'm picking slightly different breeds than every other video, because usually this video will say Cane Corso, Malinois, Husky, and we've listened to these videos, we know about it. I want to touch on some different breeds, but I can really not name the Husky. And mainly that is because of exercise. Like, I know they look really cute and they're really cool dogs, but they need so much exercise. And when they end up in a backyard or an apartment, they become loud, they become destructive, and they escape a lot. Do not underestimate the escape artist skill of a Husky. So, also, coat maintenance, you need to be really prepared to be okay with having to blow out the dog regularly to have your house look like a freaking mess. So it kind of depends if that's your cup of tea. But I would also not disregard that Husky's willingness to learn on your terms is a lot less likely than, say, a border collie or even a Malinois. Like, how Malinois are always on this list, but at least Malinois want to do things. They're like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it, whatever it is, let's do it. A Husky is the opposite. They're like, fuck no, this doesn't serve me, I'm not going to do it. And finding a good motivator for a Husky is often much harder, whereas Malinois, German Shepherds, they love food, they love toys, they love personal play, and with a Husky, they're often a little bit more like meh about things. Sometimes I would say they're more like cat-like than dog-like. That isn't to say that Huskies can't be great breeds, but if you want a low-maintenance dog that you can kind of, well, I don't like to say set and forget, but for the sake of it, let's say it, then the Husky is not your type of dog to get. I want to spend some time talking about the Blue Heeler, or the Australian cattle dog, or Bluey from the TV show. Super popular dogs. They are honestly probably one of the most cute puppies you can get. Not a beginner dog though. The Blue Heeler is a working dog. Yeah, like they fit into the same category as the Border Collie and the Kelpie and the Collie and some other herding breeds. But I think for me, the Blue Heeler is a bit less workable than a Border Collie. Like a Border Collie is very like, oh, tell me what to do and I'll do it, I'll worship you. Yeah, that's kind of the attitude of lots of Border Collies. The Kelpie is a bit more sassy. The Blue Heeler is a bit more like, I don't know, I think I know a better way to do it. Except the better way is probably not the way that you want him to do it. Yeah, and again, I feel like Blue Heelers are also much more prone to the ankle biting and the herding, whereas obviously Border Collies and Kelpies are also herding breeds. I do think it's way more prominent in Blue Heelers. Like when I get a client request with issues with Blue Heelers, it'll always say, oh, he keeps herding the kids, herding with a D, not with a T, and he keeps nipping the kids' ankles. Well, yeah, that is what they're supposed to do. I wonder if it has to do with that Border Collies are more bred these days to live in houses, to do agility and do a lot of fun, sportsy kind of things. But, and feel free to correct me in the comments, Blue Heelers are still very much working line breeds that are supposed to be working cattle. And you don't see them as often in agility shows or at fly ball and all those kind of stuff. They're still like those staunchy little dogs doing their job. And I think that's where that kind of stubbornness comes from. I also feel like blue heelers have a bigger tendency to reactivity, and they're a little less patient with you and with other people, and they're a bit more focused on their family. Yeah, so they're very like, I like you guys, and the rest I'm less interested in. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You might really like that, but I think you should be aware of that. Obviously, they can be quite a barker in suburbia as well, so be mindful of that. And again, exercise, super important, and mental exercise. Because usually with breeds like these, you go into a breed specific Facebook group and they'll go like, haha, they'll calm down when they're dead. Yeah, that is a bad attitude to have with a dog like this. You need to look at a dog like a working dog, and you have to teach them how to be chill. All right, one more breed that I want to discuss is the Rottweiler. And for the Rottweiler, I think it's a beautiful breed, but, and I'm sure there's people that will disagree, it is very hit and miss with what kind of Rottweiler you're going to get. I think if you plan on getting a Rottweiler for yourself, as a very first dog, you've never owned a dog before, you better make sure you pick an extremely good breeder and pick a docile line. Because if you don't, you have a lot of dogs on your hand. Yeah, again, Rottweilers are big, they're strong. The general perception of Rottweilers is quite similar to the Amstaff and Pity Folk. Yeah, again, you need to make sure you're responsible for that dog at all times. And I really like working with the dogs, but when I work with them, they often do have impulse control issues, which is a lot of dog, but often that goes into prey drive with cats or reactivity towards other dogs. I think in general, Rotties can be really level-headed, but once you poke the bear, it's really hard to get them down from that. And because you're working with such a large and heavy dog, you need to be ready for that. You need to make sure you socialize them well. And with that, I don't mean let them play with every dog on the planet, but also, can my dog ignore everything in its environment? And for me, it's just a higher risk dog to have. That as a first time dog owner, I would just not go there. I would stay in the zone of a very low chance of reactivity and aggression issues. And I think with the Roddy, that's just a lot harder. I have a friend who had a beautiful Roddy, and if all of them were like that, I would suggest it as a first time breed. But he was like a unicorn, it was an amazing dog. And most of the ones that I work with are a bit more tricky. And again, that's something you need to be prepared for. And the last one on my list is the beagle. I like beagles I've worked with some really fun beagles, but hounds, scent hounds, are just trickier dogs to work with. That I don't think beagles have many reactivity issues, so in terms of that, if you're worried for aggression and reactivity, I think you're pretty good with beagles. In general, obviously reactivity can happen in any dog, but your main issues with them is their nose. So I think if you are not planning to do any type of scent work or mandrailing or trekking with this dog, I don't know why you would necessarily get a beagle. So obviously they often struggle with recall. That is not to say you can't teach a beagle recall. You can, but you're gonna have a much harder time of it because you are competing with their nose, and the nose is almost always gonna win. Yeah, so that makes a beagle a bit harder. Also, they're loud as dogs. Yeah, they don't just bark, they bay. And if you can't deal with that, and because you live in suburbia and the dog is in the backyard and it starts baying because he has to be outside for 8 hours a day when you're at work, your neighbors are gonna fucking hate you. Yeah, probably just as much as the husky, but I don't think beagles are as well. Like when you get a husky, people know, the husky does the howling. Haha, it's funny. Have you seen the videos? Yeah, the videos are funny until you have to live with one. And the beagle, I think, is less known to the general public to be quite a loud dog. Again, motivation. You won't have any issues usually to train a beagle with food. You do have issues with a beagle eating everything. Again, I'm generalizing here. I'm sure there's people watching this with beagles and they're like, my beagle has never done that. Awesome. But a lot of beagles will go through your bin, they go counter surfing, they use that nose and they'll eat everything. Maybe it's coincidence, but all the beagles I've worked at have been at the vet at least a few times for operations or treatments to vomit up whatever it is they ate. So need to be super vigilant with that. You need to teach a rock solid leave it. And that is just hard. If you're more of I know I don't want to have to clean up my countertop every time and all that kind of stuff, then maybe the beagle is not the right dog for you. They are smaller dogs. They don't have any coat maintenance like a husky has, but there is a few things there that I would say if you've never had a dog before, the beagle is maybe not my first choice to recommend to you. Alrighty, that was my list of dogs that I do not recommend for beginners, for first-time dog owners. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know, do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with my list? What was your first dog? And let me know what type of list of breeds you would like me to do next. Alright, see ya!